Coming through loud and clear.
Sorry about the delay, guys. I was struggling with a new headset that did not work. Are we ready to get started, Jennifer?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I would like to thank everyone on the line and on the screen for joining us for this fall webinar series spotlighting the after-school hours. This has been made possible by many of our Alberta provincial after-school partners, along with the support from the Government of Alberta. Uh, Alberta now has an All About Alberta page on the Canadian Active After School Partnership website. So we're trying to incorporate a lot of the feedback that we heard from the After School Hours pre-conference last January. So please explore the full page as well as the Alberta-specific page, which is where you went to register for this workshop. Make sure to check out all the snacks and activities and the many other resources, and be sure to upload any ideas of snacks and activities of your own. There is a button for you to do that. And if there's anything that you want shared, featured, or presented on the Alberta-specific page, if you could please contact me. I'll include my contact in the chat. We're going to continue to develop that page throughout the fall, so the more feedback we have, the better. And now I'll introduce our presenter today. Brenda Hirschmer is the owner of Grassroots Enterprises and the principal collaborator at Campus for Communities. Her primary work involves community building and comprehensive community transformation. She recently served as the director of Alberta Recreation and Parks Association, ACE Communities, which was responsible for supporting change initiatives in over 60 rural Alberta communities. She's previously taught at Niagara College, where she also founded and managed the Niagara Centre for Community Leadership. The centre was acknowledged by the Association of Canadian Community Colleges as an exemplary practice in community development, and was a finalist for the prestigious National Peter F. Drucker Innovation Award. So I'd like to thank you, Brenda, for joining us today to discuss connecting after-school service providers, and I'll hand it off to you for the rest of the time.
Thanks, Caitlin and Jennifer. I'm Brenda Hirschmer, and I'm so happy to be here. Welcome to all of you. I think I'm especially pleased that there are so many, well, not so many of you, but I'm just really pleased that there are some of you who are really interested in this topic. And I think what that tells me is that you see the value and the importance of connecting after-school service providers. And I think that you should be commended, pat yourselves on the back, because I think what's getting clearer is that those who are interested and see the value of connecting are early adopters, because it's likely that you see and have learned that the change and growth we want to see in our communities, especially as it applies to after-school service provision, it really isn't going to happen without people like you who see the value of connecting and learning from each other. And I think there's this growing number of people like you who see that connecting and sharing and learning together isn't really a nice to have. And I think sometimes that's how we've thought about it. But it's really something that is going to become even more and more essential. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm especially happy to be working with Ever Active Schools. I've been doing some work with them. I think I may have met some of you at the Shaping the Future pre-conference session we did this past February. We did a pre-conference session using a technique called Open Space Technology, so I met some of you there. But working in general with Ever Active Schools has been a great experience, and I'm just so impressed with the work that you are doing. And I'm especially excited, I think because of my teaching background, I'm especially excited to be sharing more about communities of practice and why they're important. So we're going to jump into that, but first of all, I'm going to ask Jennifer to switch to a quick poll. And this will just give us, Jennifer, and see, I'm not really talking to myself sometimes, it'll be Jennifer, the woman behind the curtain that I'll be talking to, because she's providing all that really important technical support. So this is the poll, and I'm going to ask each of you to share where you're at in terms of your comfort level with online learning. So if you're competent and ready to jump in, you're okay, but a bit leery, you might be a fish out of water, but you're ready to give it a shot. Or maybe you really don't want to be here, and that's okay too. It's anonymous, you see, so you can be really honest here with your answer. And look at all of you who are competent and ready to jump in. Wow, no fish out of water. That's good. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. So you can all see everyone's results too. But that helps us because it just means I have a better idea of how much direction and support to provide. And I really I'm feeling some pressure with this particular webinar because this is about communities of practice and peer-to-peer learning and sharing. So I'm feeling the pressure to make sure we provide interaction, which is why we're using both the web-based platform as well as the teleconference lines so that we can ensure interaction. So some of you I know aren't connected by phone, so you'll be limited to using the written chat. But we will get there. So the first thing that I want to do, and I'll take you to the next slide, is provide a chance to get to know each of you a little better. Once we take a look at these objectives, this is what we're going to try to do in the next hour and a half. And it really, we've estimated an hour and a half. It'll depend on how many questions we have because this is about connecting you and how we can keep learning and growing together. But what we want to do in the next hour and a half is define what communities of practice are. And they're commonly referred to as COPs. So we're going to talk about COPs, the benefits and their importance. We're going to talk about when they work best, their best practices, principles, and structures. And we're going to explore, and this is the bulk of time is really going to be taken up exploring the power and potential of a COP or COPs for after-school service providers. That's the majority of the time. But we are going to spend some time talking about communities of practice, what they are and why they're different and why we really might not know a lot about them yet. Okay, so what we want to do is get to know you a little bit better. So we're going to take some time to do some introductions. We've done that first question, which is really getting a handle on your comfort level with online learning. It sounds like you're all pretty savvy, which is really exciting. What I would like you to do, though, is first of all just type into the chat, and all of you have figured out how to do that. What I would like you to do, first of all, in that chat is to just type in the organization that you're from. In most cases, I think you're from a school or a recreation organization or a social service agency. Type in the name of your organization and where you're located as well. What community, what city or town. Okay, so let's have you do that first. And I can see that you're all typing. Yay, okay. So we have Wetaskiwin represented. Good, okay. And Mary Ann from Teslin in the Yukon. How nice to meet you, Mary Ann. I'm actually heading up to your recreation gathering next week, so I may have a chance to meet you there. Good. And the YMCA of Northern Alberta. Good, okay. So we've got people from all over, from St. Albert, from Devon, from Lethbridge, from Calgary. Nice. What a great cross-section. Thank you. Okay, so I'm feeling like I'm getting to know you a little bit better already. Okay, so we're going to use this list that we've created now, and I'm going to start with Cal from Wetaskiwin. I'm going to ask him to start. Now, you should be able to see the entire list. If you don't, you can use the slider on the side to scroll up and down. So I'm going to use this as a list, starting with Cal. And I'm going to ask Cal, and actually we may need some help here as well from Jennifer, to unmute the phones because we would really like to be able to hear your voice. So Cal, I'm going to ask you to unmute your phone. If you aren't able to do that, if you don't know how to do that, the best way to do it, and I know you can do it using *6, but I would ask you maybe not to use that because we can all then hear the click. But instead, go up to your header and the toolbar there, and you'll see the old-fashioned handset of a telephone, and right beside that you'll see a drop-down menu. You see a little arrow, and if you click on that, you'll see a drop-down menu, and you'll be given the option of muting or unmuting your phone. That's how you unmute, okay? So Cal, I'm going to ask you to do that, and unmute, and then we'll keep going down the list that we've created in the chat. So Mary Ann, you'll be on deck, and then Sherry will be after that. So I'm going to ask Cal to answer that second question. What 3 words would describe the nature of your main paid or volunteer work as an after-school service provider? So Cal, are you there? I'm not hearing Cal. Okay, and it looks like Marianne is leaving as well. Okay, Sherry, are you there? Can you unmute your phone? Oh, Sherry's typing. Okay. There we go. I'm hearing a voice. To whom are we speaking? No one, apparently. But we do have Sherry's words. Okay. So thank you, Sherry. There's your 3 words: educator, director, and leader. Thank you. Let me just pause for a second. Oh, there's Cal's typing. I can see that Cal is typing as well. Let me just take a moment to explain why I'm doing this. One of the things that we know from our experience is that on average it takes a person who's participating in a webinar about 3 webinars before they are comfortable speaking up. And we're trying to jumpstart this process today. We want you to be comfortable speaking up because we need to hear from you about where we move forward in terms of connecting after-school providers. So that's really the reason for that. So Cal, thank you. Got your words as well. Director, administration, and leader. Great words. Okay. So Laura, are you there? Laura, can you unmute your phone? Looks like someone might be typing. That might be Laura. So I guess we have a lot of people who prefer to type as opposed to speak. That's okay. Okay. So Laura, you don't have a phone, so maybe we can have your words. Yeah, I guess you're going to type that, and I can see that. Okay, so in the meantime, can we hear from Jordan in Devon? Jordan, are you there? Are you able to unmute your phone?
Hello?
Okay, all right. Way to go. I'm so relieved. Thank you, Jordan. Way to go, Devon. Yay. Okay, so can you share with us your 3 words?
I'm actually not currently running an after-school program, but
Okay.
I used to coordinate and run one, but
Okay.
due to demand.
Okay.
So I guess
So
we're looking at future options right now.
Okay. Okay. Can you give us 3 words to describe what you currently do?
Programming,
Okay.
liaison with schools, and coordinating.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for leading the way in terms of unmuting your phone and letting us hear your voice. I really appreciate that, Jordan. Thank you so very much. Okay, Allison. Okay, no pressure here, Allison, but you're up next. So we're hoping that you too can unmute your phone and join the conversation. So Allison from Lethbridge, are you there? Okay. Perhaps not. Okay. What about Linda from Calgary? Are you there, Linda? Can you unmute your phone? Okay. Oh, we have people typing. Okay. So we've got some new words to check out there. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Linda and Laura and Allison. Thank you. We've got some great words, and we've got some unmuting challenges. That's okay. That's okay. And this way of doing a webinar, I must say, is not typical for a lot of people. I think we're all used to webcasts where we're just having information pushed out at us. We're pushing the envelope in terms of the technology because we really want this to be two-way. So that's the reasoning behind this. So Caitlin, I know you know how to unmute your phone, and you're next on the list. So can we have you unmute your phone and hear your 3 words, Caitlin? There.
I think
Yay,
my 3
Caitlin.
words. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go Caitlin.
I think my 3 words would be connector,
Ah.
supporter, and what's a good third one? Communicator, maybe, to listen.
Good. Thank you. That does describe your work. Thanks, Caitlin. That's great. Perfect. Thank you. Adam, are you there? Okay. Not hearing from Adam. And Nidhi?
Hello?
Oh, wait, we did hear from Adam. Thank you. Yes, go.
Hello?
3 words. We can hear you.
Well, I'm going to take what I have on my desk because we were ninja themed for this summer with our day camp. So I'm going to say director, leader, and youth ninja.
Youth ninja. Oh, that's perfect. Thanks for sharing.
I sometimes work behind the scenes. There we
I
go.
love it. Love it, love it. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so Nidhai, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly. Or Marianne? I think Marianne we tried before. Nope. Oh, and okay, how about Damien? Damien, are you able to unmute your phone? Okay. Oh, so we have Nidhai's words, director, leader, programmers. Thank you. Perfect. We can see that you typed them in. Okay, anyone that we've missed who is able to unmute your phone, and then we'll move on. Anyone we've missed? Any brave souls? Anyone courageous and able? I guess it's courageous and able to unmute your phone.
Can you hear
Okay.
me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, it's Damien.
Damien. Go, Damien. Hi.
Awesome. Hi, how's it going?
Very fine, thank you.
Excellent. So my 3 words, although I wish I was a ninja, that would be fantastic. I would say, like Caitlin, supporter, connector, and I'm trying to think something along the lines of provincial policy-er, something
Policy
along those lines.
or policy wonk, knowing the
Yeah,
hours.
that would be the negative way of talking about it.
Oh, I think a wonk is a good thing. I think
The wonk?
yes, policy wonk is a good thing.
All right.
Yes.
Can we make it an action? Policy
Yes.
wonker? Does that work?
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Damien. Thanks for sharing. Well, thank you to all of you who shared your words, whether you did it in the chat or if you did it verbally. And I know there are, and I would just want to be really upfront about the fact that I know that there are some of you who are saying, why did we spend the time doing that? And there are many people I know who don't like icebreakers, as they're often called, and really do see it as a waste of time. But I really just want to go on the record as saying that this is probably one of the most important uses of time you can make, because so much of what we need to do to work together is to get to know each other. So we need to make the time for those introductions. Almost at every meeting or every workshop, we need to invest that time because it is an investment. Now, the other reason I used this particular introductory activity, where I've asked you to really come up with 3 words, is because it's an activity that engages both your left brain and your right brain. Because the right brain had to think about all those possible words that you could select, and your left brain is the one that had to narrow it down to 3. So what we were attempting to do with that is to encourage you to bring your whole self into this webinar. Both your left brain and your right brain, bring your whole self into the learning. So there was definite method to our madness. So thank you for your patience with that, and thanks for your patience with the technical challenges. You know, we can use technology for a lot of interaction. We haven't used it historically, so there are always going to be a few little glitches as we kind of sort that out. Okay, so this is leading up to this next slide, which is really, and this is really probably the most important thing that I've really learned in terms of effecting change. And if we're going to provide really meaningful after-school initiatives, then it really is going to involve learning and growth and change. And what I've learned about any kind of change is that we can't do it without relationships. And those relationships are a critical foundation for the learning and the growth and the change that we want to see. And I think that it's especially critical for after-school service providers because we're typically reliant on the need to work with a variety of stakeholders. One of my first jobs was working at a Boys and Girls Club. And I didn't really think of it at the time, but it was clear that if you're working in an after-school setting, you are working with a lot of different organizations in a lot of different sectors, So we were working with social services and health and justice, and we were doing fundraising through service clubs. And so we did have to have relationships, and we had to invest in those relationships. So if we want to do more in terms of after school, we want more learning and growth, we have to first invest in the development of these trusted relationships, because they lead to networks and webs and the kind of mesh work that we all need to do. So that's part of what we want to do is legitimize the relationship building, because I think too often it's just something that we see as a frill, something that we do off the side of our desk. But really it's essential for this learning, growth, and change. And these relationships are ultimately at the root of communities of practice, or COPs, as I mentioned, they're often called. So just to put a little bit of this into perspective, what I want you to do, and I'm going to ask you to address this question through a poll that Jennifer's going to pull up. But the question really is, thinking about learning, how do you typically learn what you need to know to ensure the ongoing growth and development of after-school initiatives, or any other kind of initiative, really? Think about this very broadly. How do you typically learn what you need to know? Where does it come from? How do you learn about it? It could come from a variety of ways. Type your answer in there and then hit enter. This is anonymous. We won't know who is actually typing in the answers, but it'll give us an idea from the group of where you have typically learned what you need to know. Oh, I love that first answer. Isn't that so true? You know, I find that is especially true in community building, community development work. It's just been so much of it is trial and error. You know, we kind of learn it by the seat of our pants. Yes, yeah. And some of you talk to other leaders in the field. Yeah, yeah. Past experience for sure. Yeah, we do speak to our supervisors, to other leaders in the field. Yep. What about more formal learning? Is there more formal learning? Any of you learn? This might be a bit worrisome, but surveys, that's a great answer. Yeah. So staying in touch with your stakeholders in your community, yeah. Meetings, conferences, I love that, yes. Yep. By asking, I love that, by asking the youth who are, the people who are participating in the after-school program, learning from them, yes. Training, some of you talked about, training. Personal research, yes. Licensing regulations, great answers. Directors meetings, yep, for sure. Great answer. So we do keep adding that, and we'll talk about this just a little bit. But just from these answers, we can tell that we draw what we need to know from a variety of different sources. What's really, really interesting to me is that I don't think anyone typed in anything about post-secondary education. You know? It's kind of scary to me. It's kind of scary that we really haven't learned what we needed to know through formal processes. So much of it is what's listed here, which is really much more informal. So I want to talk about some additional context for this. So thank you for those of you who have participated and provided your answers. I want to add some additional context for this. This might test your understanding of the field of education in some ways, but there's an invention in 1801 by James Palans that really changed education and how we learned typically. It was an indispensable tool. Does anybody know what that tool was? I'm going to ask you just to add that into the chat. If you think you know what that invention might be, just add that into the chat. Hey, way to go, Damien. Thank you. Yes. You know, a lot of people wouldn't have guessed the blackboard or the chalkboard. My guess is that because Damien's a researcher, he might even have read the PowerPoint slides ahead of time because the answer was provided there. But he's a researcher, so he's likely to know those kinds of things. I don't know that most people would have known that. But James Palans was a headmaster in a high school, what's called an old high school in Edinburgh, Scotland. And he's been the one who is credited with inventing the blackboard and the chalk that he used to teach geography. So, up until that point, education was different. But this chalkboard, this invention, changed the very nature of learning. And some will argue that it sent education and learning in the wrong direction for the last 200 years. So let me explain why the experts would say that. Up until the chalkboard was invented, education really took a much more hands-on approach. The way we typically learned was really was apprenticeships. That was the most common way of learning. It was highly valued, and learning was much more social and collaborative. So, learners were tutored and mentored and coached, but what's important is that they also spend a lot of time learning from one another. So when you think about apprenticeships, they quite often sat with a master. When you think about all the guilds that existed, they would learn from the master. They would go out and apply that learning, and then they would come back and learn and share with their peers. So the learning was much more social. What happened when that chalkboard was invented was it encouraged the presentation of information to the masses. So classes got longer. They weren't as small. They weren't as social. It was one person standing at the front of the room pushing out information. So we started with chalkboards, and then that evolved to become overheads and whiteboards, and now PowerPoint presentations. So, the downside of that is that we moved from learning that was social and collaborative and more exploratory to learning that was more about just transmitting information. And so, along the way, I think a lot of the learning became less accessible and sometimes less valuable because it was just pushed out at us. But what's interesting when you think about it, that, that's kind of an education system that may have worked for the industrial era. But today, gosh, things are crazy, aren't they? It's so fast-paced. It's even hard to find time to connect to a webinar like this. So thank you for making the time to do that. So, but it's a fast-paced world. We're hyper-connected, and because things are changing so rapidly and there's so much information, we've also got to think about learning differently, especially as it's applied to after-school services. And so that's really our interest here today, but I think it applies much more broadly as well. So today we need something that's more of a hybrid, that really combines the best of the kind of learning that we're used to, where valuable information is shared with us. I think the term I'm hearing more these days is curating, that, we need to be using experts and teachers in more of a curating capacity. So they sort out information with us. So that's, that's kind of more traditional learning. Hopefully a little bit of what I'm doing here today. But then what we also need to do is combine that with, the practical application of that information. It's more of what apprenticeship is providing. And that's especially important when we're trying to do something different or something new. Especially if if after-school recreation is something that's new to your community, it's going to be an even greater challenge when it's something new. So ultimately, that's what communities of practice are all about. Okay? Any questions, any thoughts about that so far? I'll just pause there for 1 second, give you a chance. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay. Okay. So let's talk more specifically about communities of practice. And one of the things that I want to say up front, I don't know about you, but even though I was a teacher, I was a prof at a college, this idea of communities of practice was somewhat new. And the reason it is new to a lot of people, so don't feel badly if you haven't heard about communities of practice before, is part of that, the reasoning is that it's relatively new in terms of educational theory. It really only evolved in the early 90s. And it came from two people, from Etienne Wenger and Jean Lave. And they wrote a book called Situated Learning. And ultimately, kind of where that came from is that, Wenger came across the concept of communities of practice when he was asked by Jean Lave to join the Institute for Research of Learning. And what was really at the root of this was where they had been studying apprenticeships and how effective they were. And so it was through studying these kind of apprenticeships and the learning that happened is that they concluded, and I love this quote, what they said is that most learning, like real meaningful learning, doesn't take place with the master. It takes place among the apprentices themselves. So it's that peer-to-peer sharing and learning. That's what's important. And that's what we want to take and apply to after-school recreation. So what they looked at it as is really a community of practice as a group of people who share a craft and or a profession. So it's really more social, and what they really have emphasized is that you can't really separate learning from the social context in what it happens. So it's starting to be applied in a number of different fields. I think that the health sector has picked it up. I know certainly the colleges where I worked, they had communities of practice across the country. So there was actually a community of practice for anyone who was teaching business at a community college, or anyone who was teaching nursing, or anyone who was involved with learning related to the nonprofit sector. So we were able to connect with other colleges across the country through a community of practice. And the health sector is doing some of it as well. And it's becoming more and more important because we know we have to learn from one another. So their actual definition that Wenger and Lave came up with is that they define them as communities of practice as being groups of people who share a concern or passion for something they do, and they learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So that's their definition. But as it's been applied, as communities of practice have been established in other sectors, it's been interpreted in different ways. So I just want to show you a couple of different definitions, and I want you to focus on these definitions because I'm going to ask you in an exercise that's going to follow about the words, keywords, or phrases that speak to you and what you are looking for in terms of learning from others through a community of practice. Okay, so you're going to be looking at each of these definitions and look for keywords or key phrases. So Johnson and Lenz describe a community of practice as a group of professionals informally bound to one another through exposure to a common class of problems, common pursuit of solutions, and thereby themselves embodying a store of knowledge. That's one definition. The next one is from John Seely Brown. He said, a community of practice it's peers in the execution of real work. And for sure, after-school recreation is real work. What holds them together is a common sense of purpose and a real need to know what each other knows. So in that poll, we asked you, where did you learn? A lot of you learn from each other, from leaders in your field, from your supervisor, from people you met at conferences. So it's a real need to know what somebody else knows. Yeah. Okay. And this one, it's more than a community of learners. It's a community that learns. That's a really interesting distinction, isn't it? Not a community of learners. It's a community that learns. So it's not just hanging out at the water cooler at a conference and sharing and benefiting, but it's really being committed as well to working with others who are providing what you're providing, in this case after-school recreation, to jointly develop better practices. Okay, and another definition, a diverse group of people engaged in real work over a significant period of time, where they build things, solve problems, learn an event. In short, they evolve a practice that is highly skilled and highly creative. Okay? And one last definition, it's really a community of practice is a group of people who share a common concern, a set of problems, or an interest, and come together to fulfill both individual and group goals. And so now what the amazing Jen is going to help us do is take a look at all of these definitions. And this is a whiteboard, and you use it as a whiteboard. But let me just provide a caveat to begin with. So Jennifer has had to upgrade all of you so that you now have more power than you might have had earlier. The power will allow you to write on this whiteboard. So the first warning I have to give you is whatever you do not click on this stop sharing button. If you do, you're going to wipe out everything that's on the screen. So do not click on stop sharing, okay? What I want you to do is to click on this pencil right here. You see the pencil up here? click on the pencil, and then put your cursor where you want to underline or circle a word or a phrase that speaks to you about a community of practice. There's no right or wrong answer here. Okay? Oh, someone has figured it out already. Good. So take your cursor, click on the pencil, there you go, and circle or underline the phrases or the word that speaks to you, that best defines a community of practice. So this is going to help us and EverActive Schools sort out what you are looking for, what's most important for you from a community of practice. Nice. Okay. You can use someone's figured out how to use different colors. That's very clever. And if you really want to emphasize something, you can put a little, and you're feeling very creative, you can put a little star beside a particular word or phrase. Or if you just want to type in some new words, maybe there's some words there that maybe there's a word that's missing that you think describes a community of practice. And if that's the case, click on the T for text, and then put your cursor where you want on the whiteboard and type in any new words that you think might be missing. Okay. Good. Okay, so what's jumping out at me? So actually, anyone want to help me share this analysis of this information? Actually, Caitlin, can you help? Can you unmute your phone? I'm just putting her on the spot. You might yell at me for this, but really what I was just I'm looking at this, and there's some things that are jumping off the screen at me.
I'm here, Brenda.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you for being such a good sport, because I just put you on the spot there. Because I thought this may impact EverActive Schools more than anyone. So when you look at this, what's jumping off the page at you? Like there's some things that are that I'm seeing. But do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first? You go first.
I can go first. I think the things that are jumping out to me, multiple places, people are highlighting things like common passion, common concern, common pursuit of solutions, similar problems. So I think that's obviously a theme, the fact that we share whether it's a concern, a problem, an issue, and it's a group looking for a shared solution. And then the other thing that's standing out for me is the interaction. So they interact regularly, sharing, exchanging ideas, engaged. So connecting and then shared issues, common solutions.
Nice. Yeah. That's what I got out of it as well. I think you touched on this too, but I think the other thing there is that I think it also goes beyond. I think they've identified for sure sharing knowledge and ideas, but I also get the sense that they're looking for solutions. I think 3 people underlined common pursuit of solutions as well, and creative solutions looks like there's some interest in creative solutions too. So thank you, Caitlin, for helping with the analysis too. But what that does show us is that we're on the same page in terms of what we're looking for in terms of after-school recreation. So thank you for that. That's great. Awesome. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so we'll go back to the presentation. We'll get Jennifer to help us with that. I think we have a good understanding of what a community of practice is at this point, and I think we have a good understanding of what you all might be looking for in terms of a community practice. But just to solidify that understanding, I just want to back up a bit and really make sure that we understand how communities of practice really are different from other groups that we might be a part of. So a lot of times, because I think sometimes there's a lot of confusion and there's some overlap between a community of practice and a work group. So the first one I want to talk about, and as we talk about each of them, I'm going to ask you to think about an example where you might have been involved with that particular example. So for instance, a work group is different from a community of practice because it's more about delivering a product. You generally are all working for one manager or one supervisor. You kind of have a common task, a common job, and it ends when the job is done. So can any of you think of examples of work groups that you have been a part of or are a part of? And I think this will help us understand the difference between a community of practice and other kinds of groups. Anybody been any examples of work groups, projects that you're working on? Some of you are typing. This is good. So examples of work groups, what we're looking for. Good. That's a great example, Adam. Yeah, so you've got a work group, you've got a team that's working on developing climbing wall policies and procedures. Perfect. An accreditation team. Cal, that's a great example. Oop. And Jennifer, I don't know what happened there, but we just switched layouts. So if you can take us back to the chat, the slide, the PowerPoint, and the chat, that would be great. The wonders of working on these happen. We just have to bounce with it. So there we go. Okay, so we've lost the chat. Good. Oh, so we left talking about Cal's example, which is a really good one of an accreditation team. That's an example of a work group, or actually I think there's a lot of, I think your accreditation team might be a project team, perhaps, and I guess maybe there's some overlap between those two. A work group, a work group might be budget development or a conference. A project team might be something like an accreditation team. Yep, great examples. Very good. Oh yeah, and the performance evaluation team. Good. Melanie, that's a really good example. Okay. Are any of you, keep adding your examples by all means, are any of you part of an informal network where you have learned from others? A group that is really an informal network? See some people typing. So we're looking for, informal networks where you might meet with others to pass on business information, and sometimes that's pretty informal. It's friends, it's business acquaintances. Yeah. Sherry, that's a really good example. Yeah, the directors and a physical literacy committee. Yeah, great examples. Yeah, regional youth workers. Perfect. Okay. So can you see how that might be different from a community of practice? Because it is different, and that's why we have to come at this really being clear about what a community of practice is. So I'm going to take us to this slide and have you think about where you might have experienced the fourth kind of group, which is really the community of practice that we've been talking about. So this is really another poll. And Jen, if you can just switch us, there we go. There's actually three different questions here. You may not want to answer all three of them, but let's have some examples of where you have experienced or a community of practice, where you might have experienced a community of practice. And this could be throughout your career. Could have been when you were in school. You might not be a part of it now, but you remember it affectionately. Maybe it will help if I can give you keep thinking about it. Oh, good. Yeah, I think your regional youth workers group probably is more of a community of practice. Yeah. I think for me, one of the community of practice that I'm a part of is very informal, and it happens to be other consultants, colleagues of mine who've become really good friends, who are in some way all involved with community building or community development. Very informal group. We meet once a month. We share information. We work on things together, but we learn. Because we're all kind of coming at things a little bit differently. So those are great examples that you provided too. Yeah. Oh, there's a group. I didn't know the school. This Community Hubs Advisory Committee. That's an interesting one. Yeah. Your regional youth workers group. What's the SHEP committee? Can you type in what SHEP is an acronym for? Or do you all know? Maybe it's just because I don't know that as much as you all do about after school. Okay. So tell me why those particular groups were important. That's the second question. Why were those groups important to you? And hopefully they are. If they're effective communities of practice, I can guarantee they will be important to you. What is it about them that makes it important? Ah, thank you. School, Community, Health, and Education Partnership Meeting. Ah, SHEP. Now I get it. Thank you for sharing that. Perfect. Yeah. And it is. It's important because it helps us learn that others have the same challenges we do, but also we learn from them. We learn how they've resolved and addressed those challenges. Nice. Okay. Any other reasons why they're important? Or can you provide an example of something that you might have learned within a community of practice? Okay. This might be oh, there we go. So someone is working with schools as community hubs or creating a new model and working on a new initiative in schools that didn't have these services before. So you created it together. See, that's a great example. And it's a great example how you can tap into a lot of different resources, a lot of different viewpoints, different lenses to get to a better model. That's great. It also looks like we may not have had a lot of experience with communities of practice. And I guess in some ways we probably really shouldn't be surprised because I think this is a very new way of working, and I'm not sure a lot of our employers really see the value in us taking time to connect with others. I think they do see it as as a nice to have or as a frill, as opposed to something that brings a real return on that investment of time into our organizations. So I'm not surprised if you don't have a lot of examples, but I think you're going to find and you'll see that it's going to become more and more important. There's a great answer there for the third question. Yeah. So you've come up with something really practical about how schools, health, and the community can work together to improve mental and physical health. That's perfect. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint presentation, Jennifer. Thank you. And then we'll go to the next slide. So, what the research talks about these communities of practice and why they're important. And so if you need to build a case, and I find that this is really quite often the reality of the situation, is that, you're working for supervisors or elected officials who may not see the value of a community of practice, of you taking time out to meet with others, whether it's online or face-to-face. They may not see the value of that. And so if you need to make a case for investing that time, then these couple of slides will help you do that, because this is what the research shows, that communities of practice really, they're nodes for the exchange and the interpretation of information. And they're important because they help us retain knowledge in living ways. So it's unlike a database or a manual that goes out of date. It helps us hang on to what we've already learned so we're not reinventing the wheel. I also think, and I've seen this for sure from my own personal experience, that the community practice is what keeps you on the cutting edge. Because you're learning about, you're not having to be innovative on your own. You're learning about innovative ideas from others. It helps you kind of sort out what you pay attention to, what you do or don't participate in, and sometimes it's really about what you stay away from, because others have had the experience, so you don't need to go through that. If it's been a negative experience, so you don't need to repeat that because you can learn from others. So I think that's really something to take into consideration as reasons for being part of a community of practice. I think communities of practice are really important as well because they allow you to connect with people that you might not have the possibility of connecting with. And I know that sometimes you do have the opportunity. I know at the pre-conference for the Shaping the Future this year in February, there was a pre-conference for after-school recreation. And it was a really fabulous opportunity for people to connect face-to-face. Unfortunately, not everyone gets to go to a conference or can afford to go to a conference. But if you do this informally, whether it's through teleconferences or more informal meetings or online as we're doing today, it can connect people who might not otherwise have the opportunity to connect. So I think that's important. Kind of gives you this shared context, people with different, a lot of you said at the beginning that you learn from other leaders in the field and other supervisors. So, it gives you a chance to connect with other experts. I think a lot of times, I know what my community practices, the ones that I'm involved with, it really makes me think differently. I know that one of the women that I work with thinks so differently than I do. She's so creative. I think she doesn't just think out of the box. I don't think she even knows there's a box to begin with. So I find that her way of viewing the world really stimulates my own learning and thinking, and that's just so inspirational and motivational. I think it can jumpstart you around meaningful action. It gives you really good ideas. And I think if you do it right with a community of practice, it can give organizations a way to reach out to each other and collaborate and form partnerships that are going to have a broader impact. So, for instance, if you're contemplating having a climbing wall in your recreation facility, then you already know, for instance, that there's someone on this call who is really interested, and you could reach out to them. Caitlin has just posted a message now to ask if whoever shared the SHEP committee could email her more information about that committee, because it sounds awesome. So you see already, and as a result of one webinar, we're starting to build those connections and that learning. So there we go. So Cal, meet Caitlin. Caitlin, meet Cal. There you go. Okay. So that's that's information for your business case. So any questions about that so far? Okay. So as we think, and we're going to start talking, and we're going to need you to jump in and be more engaged about this, because we're going to talk about this in terms of after-school recreation. We do know that there's elements of COPS that make them successful. And so take a look at that, because we need to articulate what it is you're going to do. There's got to be, it just can't be about, a nice meeting. There really have to be opportunities for learning and growth. It's got to be a caring environment. I think that you really do need to get to know people on a different level, and that creates a very, very different vibe. And part of that is the informality, I think, but a lot of it is just being open and honest. So keep that in mind as we move forward. And also keep in mind that there's different stages of development with a community of practice. The beginning, is really talking about the potential and then kind of coalescing, and that's really what we're doing at this stage today, is really connecting with each other and really thinking about what we might have in common, and then start to explore that and see if there's the possibility of coming together. And then you can see as a COP comes together, they become more active. But also they have a lifespan. And so a lot of times they'll peak, they'll have lots of activity, but then members kind of come and go, and that's okay as well. But I'll tell you, if it's a really good COP, that people will always remember it in a fond way, that it's been a really memorable shaping experience of their life, sometimes without even really understanding it. And I look back on some of the communities of practice that I was a part of and how it shaped me, and I just look back on that with such really, really fond memories. And like I think one of the examples I think about is the community of practice that really formed among all of those who were involved with the ACE Communities Initiative. We met on a regular basis, and I just learned so much from these people and liked them so much. And so we're always memorable. So it's very different. It's a very different kind of a group or committee to be working with. Okay, so any COP, and think about this now. Today we're going to talk about this, about a COP, a potential community of practice for after-school recreation. But this applies to any kind of community of practice that you are a part of or may be forming. So when you're thinking about this, think about these three focal points, that all three need to be in place if your community of practice is going to be successful. So we want to explore this in terms of after-school services at the provincial level, because the EverActive Schools is interested in whether or not there is that interest. But you really could replicate this at your local level or regional level, or really the startup of any community of practice. You've got to think about the domain, the community, and the practice. So the first one, and we're going to look at each of these, again, in terms of after-school and after-school initiatives. We're going to look at the domain, the community, and the practice, and we're going to drill down into each of them. So we'll need you to participate. We're going to do the first one on a whiteboard, and Jen, you're going to take us to that, so now we all know how to use whiteboards. So we'll go to the whiteboard, and I'm not sure what we're looking for are the questions that have to do with the domain. So the first question really is there a need for community of practice for after-school programs?
Hi, Brenda. It's Jennifer.
Yeah.
So it was just on the wrong whiteboard slide, but it's there now. So I'm just going to upgrade everybody so they can go ahead and start typing.
Okay. Thank you. So here's the first question, really. Is there a need for after-school programs? And we're looking at the domain specifically. So is there a need for community practice for after-school programs? That's the first one. And are we going to add the second question as well, Jen? Because we're going to ask, is the domain, and this is something to think about, is the domain for this community practice simply after-school programs? Or are there different categories for after-school?
Yeah, absolutely. In order to give a little bit more space for people to type, I've just put the questions on individual whiteboards.
Okay, so we'll do them one at a time. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're looking at the domain now. So here's a question for you, and honestly, I can't answer this, and I'm not sure that Caitlin can either as a representative of EverActive Schools. So this is for all of you. Is there a need for community practice for after-school programs? In your opinion, no right or wrong, and again, this is all anonymous. So in this case, what you want to do is go to the T probably, because it's easier to type. So go click on the T first, and then put your cursor anywhere on the whiteboard. Okay? Just put it anywhere on the whiteboard and type. Okay? So we have 2 people so far. And what about the rest of you? Is there a need for community of practice for after-school programs? And if you're not sure, that's okay. And if you don't think there is, that's okay too. Okay, so we got 3 yeses. Good, okay. So if you're not sure, go to the T, click on the T, then put your cursor. There you go. Jennifer, can you help us kind of spread out some of those answers? I think some of them are kind of overlapping. So if you could just drag them around and spread them out a bit, that would be great. There we go. Yeah, okay, perfect. Good. I love how you are all figuring out how to use this technology. Perfect. And you know, as challenging as the technology is, this is one way that a community of practice can meet. And we're using this as much in a teaching and a learning model right now, but it can be very informal. So I'm glad you're persevering and hanging in there with this. So good. Yes, yeah, and that's a really good point. Someone just talked about the need for out-of-school programs. The terminology, that might be a really good starting point to talk about terminology, because some of you are calling it out-of-school programs, which would incorporate before and after school, for sure. Okay, good, thank you. Yes, good. So great answers there. Thank you. We just switched to the next question. Is the domain simply, do we have one community of practice for after-school initiatives or after-school service providers, or are there subcategories? That was one of the things that we have been wondering about. Are all the needs of after-school service providers the same? Can they all be grouped together, or are there subcategories? Not really sure about that. What do you think? So again, yeah, is that okay? So good, so there might be a community practice that deals with youth. I'm assuming by that you mean, at like what ages would you mean by youth? And could you break that down into ages? If it's easier to unmute, I'd love to hear somebody's voice other than my own too. So if anyone wants to unmute here, that would be great too. Okay. Okay, good. So it looks like what we're seeing is that there might be interest in a community of practice, a COP, for those who work with children up to the age of 12, 6 to 12. And we're maybe even expanding this to include weekends, evenings, and summer programs. That's really interesting. So out of school has a much broader definition. Okay, good. So two groups we're looking at, one for children 6 to 12, and then 13 to 18 looks like. Although some of you, no, see now, we're not in total agreement here, are we? Because it looks like some of you would be okay grouping it together. Okay. Okay, so there's kinders would be under 6, is that correct? Someone's going to have to help me with that terminology. Okay, so someone has said our organization has before, after, and kinder care programs, but all issues are the same for us. Okay. Okay. And you spent over a year out of school trying to figure Okay. Okay, I like the last point. We've made headway but needed a facility to come in and help us find our direction. I would like to see something provincial, though. Okay, so here again, Caitlin, you may want to jump in as well with this. What I can do is simply share my experience at this point. What you may want to consider, what Everactive Schools may want to consider, is starting out with one group that really just looks at, that encompasses everyone and their needs, whether it's kinders or children or youth. Start out with one group, and I think what you will find is that it may sort itself out into subgroups after that. Because there seem to be some of you who've said and see that the issues are the same. But it might be that as the group gets some legs under them and starts to grow, you may find that you break off into different groups. You may also find that you need to break off in terms of those who are providing supervision versus those who are providing front line. So I don't know, Caitlin, your thoughts on that at this point, or do we leave that for now? Okay, not sure if Caitlin is there, but okay. So let's go to we'll go to the next question there. That's great food for thought. Thank you for contributing. Okay, so this is where we're getting into more of the details about, okay, so you've got this need for bringing together those who are involved in after-school care, or after-school initiatives. Can you think about some of the specific needs, areas, or the kind of learning that you want? What do you think is going to be important? Okay, what specific needs, areas, what kind of learning? What are you missing? What do you want to learn from others? What do you wish you had that you don't have? So again, yeah, okay, tell us about the kind of training that you're looking for. Can you break that down for us? That'd be very helpful. And if it's easier to unmute your phone, one of the things I didn't show you is that there's this little, this androgynous kind of person up at the top on your header that has their hand up. And there's a drop-down menu beside that. And if you click on that, one of the options is to raise your hand. So if you want to raise your hand, then we'll see the raise your hand, and we'll know that you would have opted to speak, to use your phone as opposed to typing. Okay, and that's just a different way to be engaged. For some people, it's just easier to talk it through than it's going to be to write. So feel free to use that little emoticon there. Okay? Right. Oh, okay, so we've got a specific topic there in terms of staff communication with parents. Good. This is going to help Everactive Schools for sure. Yeah. I think the first couple of webinars were were some of what they had heard about specific needs. Now you're giving them even more. Yeah. But I think this is informal. You know, a lot of this is really going to be conversations with your peers. It's not necessarily formal training. It's a different way of learning, and it seems to be what people are looking for. Yeah. Oh, so some really good points here. So, yeah, best practices, staff appreciation, how to increase participation, staff retention, recruitment, evaluations. Oh, methods of way to advertise. Wouldn't it be a great conversation to have those who are running after-school initiatives to actually just share how they promote what they're doing? Yeah. Yeah. The way they advertise. Development of quality improvement plans. Who's doing what around that? Yeah. Work ethic. Now, that would be an interesting conversation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Be interesting to do a session, more sessions in Kananaskis at the conference. Yes. There you go. You're right, and thank you for that reminder for those of you who are in the open space session in Kananaskis when we were specifically addressing after school. There was a lot of topics brought up there that people were interested in connecting to learn more about from one another. So healthy eating, transportation, human supports, relationships with schools. Transportation, I remember being a big one. I know there's a lot of discussion around bullying as well, and there was one around sexuality, I think. So it would be great to be able to bring your peers together and have those kinds of conversations. And I love that you're talking about logic models. Yay, I actually get excited about logic models and outcomes. And so hope I have a chance to do more of that kind of learning with all of you. Yep. Great ideas. We're saving all of these polls, right, Jennifer? All these whiteboards?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, because this is going to be invaluable information for moving forward. So thanks to all of you for adding that information. Wow, that is just, I feel like there's a bit of a gold mine here. Okay, so that kind of helps us out with that first element that needs to be in place, the domain. So let's talk about the community. This might help us sort out as well who the community of practice is for. So we've talked about the domain. We're going to talk now about the community. So here's the questions. The first one, and I think we're doing this one as a poll, right, Jennifer? Yeah, here's the 4 questions that relate to the community. So if you can jump in with these, and you hopefully you can address all 4 of these, but if not, jump in where you feel you have a meaningful answer to share. Okay. So the first one is, what would the COP be for? Who would it be for? Who needs to be part of a community of practice that deals with after-school recreation? Second one is, what would they want to share and learn? And I think we've already addressed a lot of that, but if you think about all the other stakeholders, there might be some others that you think about as well. I think someone already talked about the youth themselves. What are the benefits is the third question. Why would someone want to be part of it? And we have got to think about that ahead of time because we've got to make a case for this. And what would the COP, this is probably the most important question, what would the COP share and produce with one another? So some tangibles, some very specifics. Okay, look, so we've got some stakeholders. Funders, interesting. Wouldn't it be great to have funders involved? Yes. After-school staff and directors, managers, supervisors, frontline providers. Yeah, I like someone has actually suggested that the COP would be for the after-school providers, but it would be open to and include members of the schools and parents. And wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah. So as well as the frontline staff, have it opened up. Okay, good. Yeah, and I think there is consensus that what they want to share and learn is ideas, resources, lesson plans, training ideas. Good. And the benefits, yeah, the collaboration, the resources, yep. And some examples of what you might share and produce with one another. Some examples there? I'm also going back and reading the chat. It's great to see that there's some connections being made already. So Adam's connecting to the Physical Literacy Committee, which is great. So already we're seeing some connections. That's fabulous. Good. Okay, anyone feel free at any time to unmute your phone and speak. See, this is probably because it's the first time we've been together, and we know it takes more than one time before we're comfortable enough to speak, but we will get there. I will be patient. Good. So training models, best practices, yep. So we're getting to some specifics, and I think we've done a lot of them. We're getting there for sure. Okay, so we're going to go to one more set of questions. So thank you for that. Everyone can see all your answers, right? But one last shot. Anything to add here? And then what we're going to do, we're going to go to that third domain, and we're going to actually talk about the nitty-gritty. You know, the actual, what would this community practice look like in terms of, you know, how often do you think you should meet? If we pull this together, and it certainly looks like there is interest in pulling it together, how often would you meet? No right or wrong answer. We're just looking for your feedback at this point. What kind of activities would you want to see? Would you meet online or face-to-face or both? How would this be collaborate? Like, how would this kind of learning and these initiatives be supported? Who's going to be responsible for supporting it, in your opinion? How would the meetings be structured? And how we measure success? Tough questions, I know. But so far, none of you have let us down because we're getting some great answers from you. We're not hearing your voices, but that's okay because we're still getting great feedback, which we so appreciate. Yeah, okay. So generally, we kind of range from once a month to 4 times a year. So maybe we're talking, you know, we can sort that out. Someone will have to make a call on that, but I think there's kind of some consensus. Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, I love this. What kind of activities? Task-based activities. Let things get done. And it's so interesting. I think I heard this at the pre-conference as well in Kananaskis. I think the phrase we heard was "get her done." Maybe that's because we were in rural Alberta. But it was just a case of, like, let's be practical. Let's get her done. Let's make some things happen. Yes. And this is interesting, too, because I'm seeing this combination of online and face-to-face. So maybe it is a combination of both. How would they be supported? So this is, and let me give you some examples here. Like I think one of the things that we've learned about communities of practice, that if you are using technology, someone needs to be responsible for that technology and the cost of pulling together people online. Someone or some funders, or it needs to be generated by those who are benefiting from it. So, you know, that's one thing to think about. The other thing is that sometimes it takes an individual. Someone needs to take responsibility for organizing the group, setting the meetings. The best communities of practice will be those who rotate that responsibility. In my opinion, that's really what I've seen. Although if you have a backbone organization that can provide that support for at least notifying people, but then involving others in terms of making it happen. Yeah. Yeah, I like the informality, and I think that's one of the things that is so clear about COPs is that they need to be informal. And love this, yes, it is like open space. Discuss what the group wants to discuss. Yes, so it needs to come from you. So it could be that, yeah, and I think this third point in the question number 5 is what we've seen a lot of, is that you provide an agenda based on what people have said they want to talk about. So there is some sense of an agenda, but within each gathering you also allow an opportunity for updates or what someone here has called roundtable discussion. That's very good, yeah. So yeah, that mix, and it's good that you've identified that. And yeah, and I love, how will success be measured? Yeah, like by getting her done. Yeah, by completing tasks, making some things happen. The feedback, and you know, it's not difficult to get feedback from participants about how they are learning and growing. Yeah, and the benefit of, yeah, so you've got this. Okay, we've got some really good ideas here. So any last thoughts in terms of where we go from here? Or perhaps this needs to come perhaps from Everactive Schools. I'm not sure, Caitlin, if you want to weigh in at this point. If we can go back to the PowerPoint, I think the next slide really basically just said, next steps, where do we go from here? And I'm not sure that I can answer that, but perhaps Caitlin can. I can assume, if nothing else, that this information, I do know this information will be compiled and go back to Everactive Schools, and I think it's given them a very clear direction. And certainly I am hearing that there's need and interest in a community of practice for after school. And so I would certainly support that. I'm not sure, what their position is in terms of being able to support that, but we will definitely take that back to them and to the other partners that have been involved in the whole after-school initiative. So anything else that anyone else wants to add?
Hi, Brenda.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
Yeah, no, I was just echo kind of what you just said. Like,
okay.
We'll take all this information back. Not just Everactive, and some of our provincial after-school partners, just because we do want to make sure that those working in after-school are staying connected and are sharing ideas, because I think a lot of those individuals out there, you're all facing similar challenges, and you're all using your own kind of planning time to find solutions when maybe we could share some of that and take the workload off. So yeah, we're definitely going to explore some of those answers and look at how to best work that.
Well, thank you then, Caitlin, because that's great leadership on your part and on the part of Everactive Schools. So that's great to hear. Thank you. So I'm going to just end with one last slide, something for everyone to think about, and then Jennifer's going to take us to an evaluation, because the evaluation for the webinars, of course, is really important in terms of your feedback about how this worked or didn't work for you, and we're always interested and wanting to learn and improve ourselves. So the evaluation is really important. But I just wanted to leave you with this last slide, because I think it's really important to think about how any community of practice that you are involved with, how you make it work for you. So just if you are a part of a community practice, and I know this is hard because we're all so busy, but I would just suggest that you take advantage of any opportunity you have to learn from your peers. That it's not, they are the experts. That's the thing that we have to embrace that's different, that we can't learn from one expert anymore, that this is really about learning from each other. And I'm so happy that I'm seeing already in the chat some links being made. You've identified your own experts within the group already. I think part of being a community of practice is also being willing to share what you've learned. It's got to be give and take. It's a community, and a community can't be one way. You can't just take information and run. You've got to give something back. I think the other thing is that it takes time and energy to sustain the relationships, and it's a worthy investment, so I'd encourage you to do that. And I would also think about that it's important to take what you've learned, like make a commitment to take what you've learned from a community of practice to your own community building work and the work that you're doing with after-school recreation. That make a commitment to value and respect your peers by actually taking that learning and applying it. Okay, so I'm going to end there with my sincere thanks to all of you, and my thanks to Everactive Schools and their funders for making this possible and providing me with the opportunity to share what I've learned about communities of practice. And also thanks to Jennifer for being the wizard behind the curtain, because couldn't do it without you. And thank you to all of you for your time and your energy. And one last task, all we would ask you to do is complete the evaluation that Jennifer is going to switch us to right now. Over to you, Jennifer, and over to you, Caitlin. I don't know if you have any closing remarks, but thanks to all of you. I've had a great time.
Yeah, I just want to, on behalf of everyone here, thank you, Brenda, I know communities of practice is one of those things that maybe many of us have heard of, but it's kind of like, how does it work? And I think you definitely asked some of the really important questions today that will get us a few steps closer to looking at how that might work for after-school programmers in Alberta. So thank you for your time today and your expertise. And I also want to remind the group that we do have 2 more webinars happening this fall. The next one is on October 28th, which is talking about partnering with schools. So how can after-school programs and schools work together? So kind of navigating that relationship. And then on November 26th, we have a webinar, again, from Brenda Hirschmer, talking about Are You Making a Difference?, which will explore the value of evaluation. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Jennifer now. I did put my email earlier in the chat, and it also is on the page where you registered if anyone has any questions or any comments to add to this conversation.
There's a question for you there from Sherry. Caitlin?
No, we don't have a certificate for the webinars.
And I can also tell you about the evaluation webinar. Someone was asking about logic models. We are going to talk about logic models too. There you go.
Great. So if there's no more questions right away, then I'll, Jennifer, did you have any wrap up?
Yeah, just a quick reminder to any of the participants, once you're filling out the evaluation form, unlike the polls that we've done earlier in the session, these are confidential, so you won't see the results. So no worries, once you click the button and you push enter on those open-ended questions, we do receive your responses on our end. And once you've done so, you can just click the X to close out your screen and hang up the phone, and that's it. That's all that you have to do to get disconnected. So thanks so much, everybody, for your participation and your engagement today, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of the day.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Bye, everyone.